Call the meeting to order. Roll call. Vernon. Here. Sherry.
Here.
Dan. Here. Ty.
Here.
Hayden. Here. Show 5 here. Everybody please stand and pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America. And to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for all coming. All of the public comment will be allowed at the mayor's discretion during special meetings and work sessions. This is exclusive of items requiring a public hearing. Each speaker is limited to 3 minutes, and a total amount of time allowed for public comment per each agenda item is 30 minutes. As a reminder, the public and city council members alike, the city council staff will not engage in a dialogue or debate with any speaker pertaining to any comments made. Members of the public wishing to speak must keep their comments germane or relevant to the specific agenda item before the council. Please note that the council will not be taking a vote on any item in the work session. If anyone would like to speak on a particular agenda item, please wait until after the staff presentation and questions from the city council. After that time, please wait to be recognized by the mayor. Remember to state your name and address for the record. If you're online and would like to participate, please type your name and chat in the chat room and wait to be recognized before unmuting and speaking. We'll go on to item number 1, service agreement with the engineering firm Olson related to scope and fees for year 1 of street improvements.
Thank you, Mayor. Maddie Waldeck, Assistant City Administrator. The scope and fee that is included in your packet tonight is authorizing city staff to enter into agreement with Olson to implement year 1 of the 5-year roadway improvement plan that was adopted and reviewed by this governing body in October of last year. With us tonight, we have Brian Blizzard, who was previously with GBA, but now with Olson. We also have Paul Moore with Olson that's available online. This would allow us to put to work the year 1 improvements that were authorized by this council, using fund balance to fund the first year, and then also to put information on our website, the interactive portal that we've discussed, so that residents can type in their address and see how their streets are rated and see what roadway improvements are scheduled for this year and see their tax dollars at work. So that is the scope and fee that is included in your packet, and we would be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Does anybody have any questions for Maddie on this?
I do not, sir.
No.
No.
Okay. Entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we adopt the service agreement with engineering firm Olson related to scope and fee for year 1 street improvement.
Have a motion to hear a second.
I'll second.
Have a motion a second. I'll take a vote. Vernon.
Aye.
Sherry.
Aye.
Ben.
Aye.
Ty.
Aye.
Hayden. Aye. Passes 5-0. Item number 2, consideration of professional service agreement with engineering from firm Olson related to 158th and parallel projects.
Thank you, Mayor. This project that is before you tonight is completing the roadway improvements that are started at 155th. This would complete 158th to parallel, continuing those roadway improvements through that area. As a reminder, the city was very fortunate to receive over $5.1 million towards this project from the Mid-America Regional Council. As you recall, Olson is the engineer for not only the 155th Street project, but also Metro Green. And through that project, through the Metro Green Trail project, we asked them in the first phase to design the trail to contemplate future roadway improvements so that we're not installing infrastructure and then 2 years later ripping up infrastructure that we just installed. So we thought that it would be very prudent of us to continue working with Olson through that project. Additionally, through the easements that we were able to require with Metro Green, we will not have to go back to those same property owners and ask for additional right-of-way consideration. So that is the agreement that is included in your packet. Again, we have Paul Moore online and Brian Blizzard here with us from Olson, and we'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Does anybody have any questions for any of the three?
I just think it's important that we are consistent with the management of this project. So if Olson is in line with doing part A, then it seems reasonable for Olson to be also in line with part B.
Thank you, sir.
Sherry?
No.
Ben? No comment. Hayden? I entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'd move we authorize the city administrator to execute the agreement between the city of Basel and Olson for design and engineering services for the 158th Street and parallel roadway construction project.
I have a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second,
A motion and a second. Call for a vote. Hayden?
Aye.
Ty?
Aye.
Ben?
Aye.
Sherry?
Aye.
Vernon?
aye.
Passes 5-0. Moving on to item number 3, consideration of professional service agreements with GBA related to Civic Campus Agreement.
Thank you, Mayor Leslie Riverola, City Administrator. Similar to the 2 action items prior to this one, the city of Basel did compete and received a funding award from the Mid-America Regional Council for the use of KDOT Transportation Alternative Program funding to build out the trail network on the Civic Campus project. As you may recall, we actually ended up receiving even more funding than what we had originally applied for through additional dollars being available, and because our trail project was the highest scoring project. So we stand in line to receive $1,240,074 through Mid-America Regional Council's program to construct those trails. The agreement that you have in front of you is between the city and George Butler and Associates, who is already doing the civil engineering work on the Civic Campus Park improvement projects. And so, again, similar to the prior items, we thought it prudent to maintain the same civil engineering firm to assist us with building out this network. This project has already had its 1302 form submitted to KDOT. That form has been reviewed, and we are just awaiting a funding agreement from KDOT to finalize our work. And then obviously we need to finalize an engineering agreement. So we're ready to get started. We're ready to bring these trails to the community, and we know people are very eager to utilize them. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Anybody have any questions for Leslie?
Again, I think that with the city staff being heavily involved with ensuring that marked funds was appropriate or granted to us. I think it's also important to stay consistent with the fact that we already have GBA working on one part, and it doesn't make sense to me to have another firm come in and potentially eat up additional funds. So I clearly support that measure.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions or comments?
Well, I don't have any questions. I want to thank staff. I know you guys had a long haul getting these MARC grants back, as well as Vernon. Vernon, you don't take a lot of credit for this, but you're the one that definitely helped to push this over the line. So we definitely appreciate both sides of this, because now it's finally come to fruition, and the city's definitely going to appreciate this for sure.
Thank you.
And with that being said, President, I do appreciate those comments, but probably more importantly is ensuring that we have a company that is consistent with the way that we're moving forward, instead of using any additional funds on another system, on another company. So thank you, sir.
Point well taken.
Yeah, I appreciate that consistency as well. And then also moving the project forward, I think makes a lot of sense.
Thank you.
Everything time. Okay. I entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move to authorize the city administrator to execute the statement of work 008 between George Butler and Associates in the city of Basel, Kansas for design and engineering of KDOT funded Civic Campus Trail project.
I have a motion. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second. I'll take a vote. Sherry?
Aye.
Ty?
Aye.
Ben?
Aye.
Hayden?
Aye.
Vernon?
Aye.
Passes 5-0. Moving on to item number 4, consideration of ordinance number 874, amending the City of Basel traffic schedule to permit the placement of no parking signs along Falcon Lakes Parkway from 147th Street to K7 Highway.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, Gene Miracle, Municipal Services. Taking comments and concerns into account from the past 2 meetings, staff has laid out a parking plan to accommodate concerns until a permanent parking lot at the driving range can be constructed. Inside your packet material tonight is a layout of a diagram for the proposed parking detail. And I would stand for any questions.
Does anybody have any questions for Gene?
No, I appreciate you all taking a look
Yeah.
and making sure we address the safety concerns, but not, rip the rug out all at once.
We did meet with Fairmount Township Fire Department with this
Good.
layout.
Okay.
There are indicator signs for the golf cart crossing path on order.
Okay.
So those will be installed as well with arrow signs from no parking here to corner. And then we can paint the curve area yellow along the radius there from Clubhouse Drive down Falcon Lakes Parkway. And keep in mind that once the driving range parking lot is built and opened, then we'll come back to take away that parking area. So we've also, City Administrator Leslie, we've met with the golf course owner and showed him this layout, and it's adequate for the number of cars that he generally sees for his open hours at the driving range.
How soon will this be completed, Gene, if it gets approved tonight?
We'll get on it next week. I'll see when the golf cart signs will come in, but we can go out and get the other signage posted
Okay,
and move forward with that.
all right, good deal. I entertain a motion.
Wait. You said you can paint the curbs
Yes.
or you will paint the curbs?
It's at your direction. If you want the curbs painted, we can. I highlighted them on the map just to show out the area. But our plan was to put the no parking with the arrows here to corner in those areas. But we can if we have paint, that we can paint the curbs.
I moved to Basel from a golf course community in Colorado. And if those curves are painted, then that adds more clarity. So I would highly advise you to paint those curbs.
Yes, sir. We can take care of that.
Now, again, that's just a thought of mine, city administrator. People need to look at discussing that, but my prior experience of moving from Colorado golf community to here, that would be highly advised.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and I think I would just like to say thank you for you guys coming back and reconsidering everything that we discussed at our last meeting to help accommodate parking issues until the other area is able to be built. So I appreciate the extra effort you all took.
Thank you.
On the motion, do you want that included in there about painting?
I don't believe that's necessary, Mayor, but we certainly understand the direction and we'll evaluate that and make sure it's something that we can both do and then maintain. Definitely appreciate the direction.
Okay, anybody else have anything?
Nope.
I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move we approve ordinance 874, amending the City of Baser's traffic schedule to permit the placement of no parking signs along the Falcon Lakes Parkway.
Have a motion to hear a second.
I'll second.
Have a motion and a second. I'll call for a vote. Vernon,
Aye.
Sherry,
Aye.
Ben.
Aye.
Ty.
Aye.
Hayden.
Aye.
Passes 5-0. Moving on to item number 5, acceptance of easements and right-of-way for the Basel Connected projects, 155th Street Improvements Project and 158th Street Parallel Trail Improvements Metro Green Project.
Thank you, Mayor. Included in the council's packet for consideration is an additional easement that we've been able to voluntarily acquire for the 155th Street project, which is track 42. It's on the corner of 155th and Parallel. We met with the property owner several times, and we are happy to present to you an additional easement that leaves 5 tracks that are left. We believe that one will be voluntarily acquired, while the other 4 that are owned by 2 different property owners will go through the proceedings that we spoke about in previous meetings. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Anybody have any questions for Maddie?
Thank you, Maddie.
Okay, I don't believe so, so I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, this is Sherry, and I would move to accept the easements and the right of way for the 155th Street and 158th Street Metro Green trails and roadway.
Have a motion to her a second.
I'll second.
And motion a second, call for a vote. Ty?
Aye.
Hayden?
Aye.
Sherry?
Aye.
Ben?
Aye.
Vernon?
Aye.
Passes 5-0. Do I need a motion to get out of special meeting?
So yeah, you'll adjourn this.
Okay. Need a motion to adjourn the special meeting.
Mr. Mayor, I move we adjourn the special meeting.
A motion to have a second.
I'll second.
Call for a vote. Hayden?
Aye.
Ty?
Aye.
Ben?
Aye.
Sherry?
Aye.
Vernon?
Aye.
5-0. We're moving to the work session. Before we do that, I want to move item number 13 up to under item number 5. For the consideration of how long this meeting is going to be to help some of these people get out of here. So. Everybody got that? Item number 1, resolution 2023-04, consideration of accepting Landauer Circle into the city of Basehor Street network.
Thank you, Mayor. Included in your packet for feedback for the city staff is a request that we received from Creek Ridge Phase 3 Townhomes Association. We have Pat McGrath, who is the president of the HOA, here with us tonight. And over the last several months, we have been working on negotiating the easements for our Metro Green Trail project. And during the course of that, we received 2 requests from the HOA that are included for your feedback tonight. And so we're really looking for feedback from this governing body to incorporate that feedback before your ultimate consideration at your regular meeting 2 weeks from today. So this request is acceptance of Landauer Circle, which is this circle here. Well, my mouse can cooperate with me. It connects to Landauer Street. Landauer Street, 156th Street and 157th Street are all publicly owned roadways. On the original plat, Landauer Circle was considered a private road. So we've met with the Creek Ridge Townhomes Association. Gene Miracle, our municipal services director, has gone out and reviewed the streets. In addition to that, it was included in the analysis that was completed last year when we did our comprehensive street analysis. The rating of the road is over 90, which would be considered good. So we have reviewed and done inspections of that particular circle. Staff is recommending approval of that, but we certainly would appreciate any feedback that this council has. So we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. McGrath, like to say anything?
Mrs. McGrath, I think she's.
Would you like to speak on about anything? Yes, please.
Good evening, everyone. Yes, I'm president of Creek Ridge Phase 3 Townhome Association. I moved here in 2015. That's when my home was being built that I moved into. At that time, the association was all owned and taken care of by Jeff Shear. He turned the land over to us as an HOA in 2017. And at that time, we were led to believe that Landauer Circle was a city street. And it had been taken care of. So we just assumed that. He never told us differently. Then through the years, we have learned that it is a private street. We are made up of 40 units, very small homeowners association. And we would really appreciate the city going ahead and taking care of that street. There's no way we can, as a small group, take care of that. So appreciate your consideration and thank you, Maddie, for helping us.
Thank
Do you have
you.
any questions?
Anybody have any questions for her?
Yes. So who's been taking care of the streets since 2017?
I'm sorry.
Who's been taking care of the street since 2017?
At one point, I remember the road being resurfaced and the snowplows still come through. So again, it's just a small little circle. Again, it just, we were not really even talking about it. We just assumed the city did it because they plowed Landauer Street and 156th Terrace. So we just assumed that, but it's been taken care of.
Okay, but by who though?
Was it the city?
Gene?
I don't know. I assumed it was the city, but
No, we would go through and plow if there was an emergency call from EMS based off of our emergency snow route. But they had a private contractor that did snow removal and
yes, we can get.
all of that through the years. So we never plowed up through there. They had people do their driveways and
Yeah, we have a
sidewalks
hired,
and all of that. So the other maintenance, we don't patch potholes or anything up in there.
So once it becomes a city street, we will be patching potholes, we will be
It would go on our maintenance
going
schedule.
through and doing the snow removal.
Yeah.
Okay, so it sounds like a win-win for them. That's a
Right.
yes, okay. And for us, there's no work.
Just basically plowing that center loop.
Sounds like a no-brainer to me.
Now, we won't do the driveways. But yes, we carry a dispatch radio. So if there's ever a medical call through that, we would run through there, making it available for EMS to access it if their contractor hadn't been through there.
So no foul, no harm, just pull them in, right? Let's pull them in.
On behalf of the association, we thank you very much for considering.
Oh, I know this is not a vote. But my opinion is being shared.
Does anybody else have any questions or
No.
comments?
I agree. I think it makes sense with the increased traffic from the park in there and minimal incremental effort and cost and good current condition. So I'm all right with it.
Okay. No other
Mayor, you
questions?
could, if somebody is interested, that could certainly be a consent agenda item.
That's what I was gonna ask. Yeah.
I agree.
Everybody
Yep.
agree?
I agree.
Okay, put on the consent. Moving on to item number 2, resolution 2023-05. Consideration of accepting donation of land within the city limit of Bacers from City Creek Phase 3 Townhome Association next to Tomahawk Park.
Thank you, Mayor. As we discussed, we've been working very closely with the Creek Ridge Phase 3 Townhomes Association through with our other projects. And they recently went to a vote of their membership about the easements that we were able to voluntarily acquire from them for our trail project. And then also the second ballot question that was posed to their membership was, do they want to donate this 2.4 acre tract that's highlighted in blue to the city that is directly adjacent to Tomahawk Park for public purposes? Staff has done review of the property. We've ordered a survey. We've had an appraisal ordered as well. And so that information should be included in your packet at your regular meeting. And so included in your packet for feedback tonight is staff's recommendation of acceptance of that donation. It's basically the creek. See if I can, so north would be to the right. This is the walkway here over to Tomahawk Park. This is Landauer Street here. And then this is 156th Street. And so the park is kind of over here in this area. And this would just be directly adjacent to that and include the creek. And then we've also heard some concerns about parking for Tomahawk Park. And as I know you're aware, phase 2 for Tomahawk Park does include the parking lot. And the reason why we delayed that is because very similar to the previous projects, we didn't want to install a parking lot and a walkway and then have to rip it up when we improve 155th Street. So it's very important to coordinate those efforts. But we certainly hear the concerns of the community about a temporary solution. And so if the governing body elects to accept this land donation, we would then study what the possibility of doing some very small stall parking right here in this area that I'm kind of moving over with my mouse to see if we can do some pull-in parking along there to eliminate that temporary headache for the community. So it's something additional for your consideration as well. So staff does recommend approval of acceptance of this, and we'd be happy to receive your feedback.
So the recommendation of this land being donated is that we already have planned parking somewhere.
Yes,
We also, so that would be additional parking
yes, sir.
in addition to the planned parking. The assumption is, and clarify this for me, that the planned parking was going to be on 158.
The planned parking is on off of 155th. And
Okay.
so the reason why we constructed that in phase 2 is because when 155th Street improvements happen next year, we didn't want to construct a parking lot this year and then have to rip up infrastructure next year when we improve that roadway. And so we wanted to coordinate the timing of that construction. But in the interim, we certainly hear the public's concern that there is a parking concern in that corridor. There's plenty of street parking. However, we think a few, maybe 10 stalls of pull-in parking on that corner there would certainly help with that issue as well.
Okay, so we're gonna see parking on 155th,
Yes,
and we're gonna see parking on this donated land.
yes, sir.
You said it was a creek.
Mhm.
Can you put parking on a creek?
No, the creek is right here and you can kind of see it kind of snake through
Right.
here.
I'm familiar with that creek.
Yeah, and so the parking that we would be recommending was where we all stood when the mayor was giving his speech for
Okay.
the ribbon cutting. So that is relatively flat ground. It would position it to where people could easily pull in and then pull back out.
Okay,
And we wouldn't want to do like a parking lot per se, but just a few stalls of pull-in parking. And we're in the very preliminary stages of this. But this is something that we wanted to let the council know for their consideration.
because as you know, I'm pretty precious about 155th Street
Mhm.
and making sure that that traffic continues to flow,
Yes,
uninterrupted. And if we have another parking lot on 155th Street, that's just gonna bog things down. So if we're able to get more parking off on the off streets, and that would be appropriate, would be recommended, highly recommended.
thank you, sir.
Anyone else have any questions or comments?
Just as we were looking at it tonight, is there any liability concerns with creek on city property?
I would yield to Maria, but we have sent this to Pete Heaven, our land use attorney, for his review as well. He hasn't brought any of those concerns to us. But we're certainly still conducting our due diligence, and that information will be included in your packet for consideration at your next meeting.
Perfect, thank you. There's already some, so it's probably in line. And otherwise, I think it's great. Add a few spots there would be good. I know. My wife and the boys have been back over there and it's hard to find a spot sometimes, which
Yes,
is great.
absolutely. Thank you.
When I was even. I would even mention that if you look at Shawnee Mission Parkway's 46 miles, and Overland Park's like 60 miles, the majority of that's just following creek and floodplain area. So it's real similar. They received the same kind of donated land as this property.
Anybody else have anything? Okay, we'll move on to item number 3. Consideration of adopting an ordinance amending the city of Mesa traffic schedule to permit the placement of no parking signs in Creek Ridge near Tomahawk Park, Landauer North Side, 156th Street.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. This is Gene Miracle, Municipal Services. This goes with what Maddie just discussed a little bit. In your packet, The 10 off-street diagonal parking spots, one being handicapped, and then we would look at doing a 4-foot walking connecting path to the existing path where everybody stood for the ribbon cutting. And then placement of no parking along the entire north side of Landauer from 156 to 157th. And the creek is south of that area, and there is an estimated probably 10-foot elevation difference from the flat designated red stall parking to the creek bottom. That area is about where the porta potties was setting. And with the acceptance of the land donation, takes it into consideration right to the west edge of the last stall right there. Then the property heading to the west would remain with Creek Ridge Phase 3.
Just questions, no real thought process. But like 156th Street, there would be parking lot on both sides of the street. East and west.
Yes, we would not affect 156th or 157th. And then we would install no parking at the end road. We'd put delineators with no parking there at the end of 156th, where there's that little discoloration there next to the existing sidewalk. Correct, right there.
Full disclosure, I tend to park on that side of Landau at one of the homes. And that's the only parking that's available. And you're saying you want to take that away, again, full disclosure. You said you want to take that away. There's not enough parking on that south side without interfering with, the homes that were built there.
And I was wondering, I know that's preliminary, but the timing of no parking signs versus those off-street parking spots, if we could wait until those were available to at least allow some of that to move to a designated spot.
Again, as I look at this diagram and I see there are sidewalks that are specifically going down to Landauer from the two properties that I tend to visit on that north side. And if people cannot park there, they cannot park over on, I can't read that street, Landauer Circle, so there's just not enough room there. So to my fellow council members' point, if we get those 10 parking spots put in, would that eliminate this, the need to eliminate parking on that side?
The problem that we're having is people's parking right around the radius on Landauer.
Okay,
There's not enough turning movement for emergency vehicles or regular vehicle traffic to go through when they're parked on both sides of the
Okay.
street. So we're trying to eliminate, even if we took in consideration no parking from 156 to Landauer or to 156 Terrace, just that one block. And then allow parking going west from 156 Terrace west to 157th.
that sounds like it sounds like a real similar situation with Falcon Lakes. I mean, you want to be able to have people come and visit, but you're saying that you can't really visit those two homes there because there's no parking and they have specific walkout basements, for people to be able to come in. So if you just block off that one piece and say, no parking, then that's fine. But to block off the whole side of the street, I think is a little bit much.
We can revisit this and bring another option back to you. And we can price out what the cost of the parking lot would be and look at any direction you want to provide us to look at. Limit the parking specific areas like we worked through on the Falcon Lakes Parkway. And then bring you another option back to review.
as a retired law enforcement officer, I know, and a first responder, I know we need to be able to get in there. So if we need to just close out that one piece, then look at closing out just that one piece. But don't, some of these folks in those areas, are elderly. They can't, get all the way up and around. Would hate to block that off for them.
Take those concerns into consideration and bring back another proposal.
And I might throw in just real quick, do we turn the corner just up to the first driveways on 156th Street, just to kind of keep that whole intersection clear? Just for consideration, street traffic. Rather than
Will do. Anybody else have any comments? Questions? Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gene.
Mayor, just so that I am clear, we will bring back a revised suggestion to the regular meeting, or do you prefer that we bring back a revision at the May work session?
I think we need to bring back to May.
The May
May,
work session,
yeah.
okay.
Moving on to item number 4, PFP 004 22, consideration of acceptance of public road dedication fairways at Falcon Lakes, second plat.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council, Crystal Both Planning and Zoning. This item was originally heard by the Planning Commission in March. At the March Planning Commission, the Planning Commission denied the plat request. This plat request was taken back to the Planning Commission last night. It was taken back to the Planning Commission because state statute is very clear on the role of the Planning Commission when a subdivision plat request meets the zoning district regulations. And in this case, it does meet zoning district regulations, and according to state statute, that means the Planning Commission shall approve the plat. Now, we do have a bit of a discrepancy between our existing zoning and subdivision regulation requirements and state statute. Our zoning requirement, our subdivision requirements, require that the Planning Commission hear this and then it come to the city council for final approval. The state statute clearly states that the Planning Commission is solely responsible for the approval of the layout of the subdivision. The city council is responsible for the dedication of any public rights of way, so a roadway, easements, a park, something of that nature. In this case, we do have a knuckle cul-de-sac, and we also have a sewer line easement that does need to be dedicated to public, So the city council would be considering whether or not to accept those public dedications. Again, with our current regulations, it also states that the city council will accept the plat. The state statute does not give much guidance on what the city council's role is in accepting a plat because the role is solely with the Planning Commission. However, Pete Hebben last night did tell the Planning Commission, because this question came up, that the city council should behave in the same way that the Planning Commission should behave. And that is that if the plat meets the zoning requirements, and again, this 2-lot plat request does meet the zoning requirements, that the city council should approve the request. So last night, the Planning Commission approved the request for a 2-lot subdivision. This evening, this is informational only. We will of course bring this back to you at a work session. That is a lot of information and it is confusing. If you have any questions, please ask them.
Okay. Maria, did you
Yes.
want to-
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to provide one final remark before staff returns this item back to the council. Obviously, this is a work session, as you know, and so there's no voting tonight, but in a few weeks, you all will be tasked with one question, and I just wanted to clarify that so you can keep it in mind as you receive public comment. The sole question before the council ultimately will be whether to receive, to reject or to approve the dedication of the public right of way. You all may receive input, public comment tonight or over the next few weeks, certainly by concerned neighbors, perhaps people with legitimate concerns, questions about land use for this particular item. But I did want to maybe help out by reminding you of the question and the task that will be coming before you, and that is strictly whether to accept this dedication or not.
Thank you.
Anybody have any questions, comments? This time?
In the public right away, you're specifically stating, I guess Crystal specifically stated the sewer easement and the knuckle cul-de-sac as well. So those are the only two things that we should be considering when looking through this project.
Yes.
Anybody else have any questions or comments?
Well, so yeah, so with this, I mean, just as far as process and procedure, we do have possibility for public comment, correct? So are we going to allow the applicant to speak and then have public comment thereafter, Mayor?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
So do you want to start with?
Yeah. You want to
Applicant?
go ahead and speak on that? Marty?
Excuse me, Marty Strike, Falcon Lakes Golf Club. I really don't have anything else to add than what's been presented. As was presented 2 years ago, there were two concerns before the easement right away and the traffic. City engineers and third party gave us recommendations. We followed those and came back and with the revised application. So I think you're caught up on the process. I don't have anything else to add at this time.
Okay, thank you. Does any council people have any more comments before I open it up to the public? Yeah, not, okay.
Is there a better view of the knuckle cul-de-sac that would show where the cars are pulling in and out? So, okay,
Is that detail A on the right side?
so will the cars back out of the driveway right into that to where they can pull forward and then pull onto that main road?
Yes, council member, that is the idea. The knuckle cul-de-sac is to keep cars from pulling directly out onto the roadway, but to provide a bit of a buffer so that to enhance the safety and to, again, to keep cars from pulling directly out onto Clubhouse Drive.
So they could back out of the driveway and then go forward and then they go forward out onto the main road, not back out onto the main road.
Correct. I would be hesitant to comment on the driving habits of
Right.
people who, but yes, that
But,
is the
but
idea.
that's, but
Yes.
okay. Cause it's not super clear to me right here. But that was my assumption is there's an area where they would back, stop, go forward and pull out onto the road.
Yes.
Okay.
Is there enough room there for safety vehicles as well?
This was reviewed by our third-party engineering firm, and there were no comments or concerns regarding that.
I've seen knuckle cul-de-sacs like this on curves. I don't think I've personally ever seen one on a straightaway. Do we have other knuckle cul-de-sacs like this on other straightaways?
You have one right there.
Yeah.
Just to the north of it, that's the same style, it's larger.
Mm.
Like a knuckle.
I guess I would have called that a cul-de-sac.
City of God.
I hadn't been out to Falcon Lake since November. And I wanted to go out and take a look at this. And during the drive, I also went down the Briarwood Street. I don't know what, is that 154th, 53rd? And as I go west on it, and see another knuckle cul-de-sac that's almost extremely similar to that. So this is not new, unless that's not part of the city. My only concern is that that's gonna be no parking on that cul-de-sac at all. So they'll be pulling into the driveway, but there cannot be a car that will park on any of that cul-de-sac.
Clubhouse Drive is posted no parking.
Right, so is this knuckle cul-de-sac considered club? the drive, Football Drive. Or was that considered private property?
Councilmember Fields, I think that would actually be at the direction of the city council as it relates to whether you want that to also be continued to be signed, no parking. If the city council did not accept this as public right of way, then it would be private, it would be a privately maintained road and it would be up to the private property owners to sign it. If you accept it as public right of way and a public roadway, then you would have the ability to regulate parking.
Well, parking needs to be regulated on that.
Did the cul-de-sac in question meet all our regulations that we have in the city?
Councilmember,
Diameter, the basics?
yes, so again, this was sent to our third-party engineering firm. They did not raise any concerns. This is not a full cul-de-sac. It's not. Our regulations do provide for details for what a full cul-de-sac should be, but this is not that. It's a knuckle. So I know there have been concerns that it perhaps does not meet those regulations for a cul-de-sac, but this is a cul-de-sac light.
So it doesn't meet what we would call our full cul-de-sac regulations, correct? We don't have any requirements or regulations for a knuckle cul-de-sac.
Not that I have been able to find, no.
So should we default to meet the cul-de-sac regulations or no regulation? Or is that what you're asking us?
I believe that's what we're asking you. And
Okay.
again, our engineering firm felt that this was a solution to a problem and that it was appropriate. And that what has been presented is appropriate.
Any other questions from anybody?
I guess specifically in regards to the other portion of the right of way, the easement going over sewer lines. Where so the sewer lines, as I can see, are not going to be through the cul-de-sac. I'm assuming that's the dotted lines going straight through the middle here, correct?
The dashed lines.
The dashed
going
lines,
in
yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Diagonal
Yes,
going through
right
there. I mean, obviously, we can't see where a home is there. If I understand it correctly, the home's going to be towards the back portion, which would almost look like it would be, there would be a home over that. The south portion, was that correct?
Yes, council member, lot number, the north lot, that is proposed for the home to be behind the sewer easement. But the southern lot, the home is proposed to be in front of,
So the homes are staggered. Gotcha.
yes.
Now you mentioned that, we've spoken to like fire and EMS. What about like trash service? Do we know, is that going to be satisfactory for trash service?
I do not believe this was sent to them for comment. I don't believe that was.
Okay.
Anybody else have any comments?
Not at this time.
Okay, I'll open up the public. Yes, ma'am. Please state your name and address first, please.
Good evening, I'm Crystal Smith, 4820 Clubhouse Drive. We're the property just to the north of the proposed north lot. So we have a clear visibility of this proposed bump out of the road. It measures at 1722 square feet, which does not calculate to the subdivision regulations for a minimum cul-de-sac of 25 square feet or 25-foot radius depth. Our cul-de-sac Clubhouse Drive is 90 foot in depth. You can see how much more narrow the proposal is. We have trash service. He has a hard time even navigating our 4-house cul-de-sac without having to reverse and re-maneuver his truck so he can collect our trash. We've got the plow trucks that come through. They're the same way. this is gonna be terrible for them to try to maneuver that and get against curbs. They're gonna be dumping all the snow either right out into Clubhouse Drive, which is under the city guidelines that that's a stated snow route as it is. Going over the sewer line is a terrible idea in general. You're gonna have a driveway to get to the house that's behind the sewer line. I know you want to relieve the city of responsibility of those repairs, but you know, all the municipal attorneys I've talked to said 100% of the cases that's come back to the city every time, no matter what documentation they prepare ahead of time. I'm super nervous. I'm sorry. All that stuff goes into paperwork on a file in a bank with, you know, it's going to be sold multiple times afterwards. There's no guarantee that there's not going to be a mistake, an omission made, and that stuff is gone. The front property, you know, the south property is going to be well in front of the sewer line. It's difficult to guarantee that nothing's going to come back on the city for either of these things. If someone pulls out of their driveway, that's a very narrow driveway. They cannot, there's no way to reverse. That cul-de-sac is less than half of a basketball court. So you're talking about cars coming, reversing out of either or driveway to go north or south in the opposite direction. It's not possible. So we ask that.
Thank you so much. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Is there anybody else? Yes, sir.
So my name is Mark Jones, 4803 Augusta Drive, Baser. I'm in the right-hand side of the picture there in Falcon Lake Villas. I want to speak towards the HOA situation a little bit. I understand the way this is being presented. It's right away on the cul-de-sac, and that's what the motion is going to be, but I still would like to get this information out there. A little bit of background: when the application was done 2 years ago on the application, it stated HOA was NA, there would be no HOA. When the application was submitted this time, it was originally submitted for Falcon Lakes Villas. On the Sunday before it went to the zoning commission, it was changed to Falcon Lakes Fairways. And in the presentation of the zoning board, the applicant stated that there were different HOAs out there, didn't have all the background and everything, and I'd like to set that straight. There's 5 different HOA entities at Falcon Lakes Complex. 4 of them are managed under a single umbrella. Okay, Falcon Lakes Villas, this area right here, is the only one that is a self-governing body. If the way the application stands right now is these would be governed by Falcon Lakes Fairways, which is part of the umbrella, which has totally different restrictions and guidelines from the villas. I sent an email with some information to the council. That fence line up there is 175 foot long. The fairways allow wooden privacy fences. Lot 141 would be able to put up a 175 foot long wooden privacy fence against these other 2 houses. I just don't understand how we could have immediately adjacent properties governed by 2 completely different governing bodies. Okay, so I understand it's not really the question on the table and how you will vote, but I think some of the background and clarity comes into this. So thank you very much for your consideration.
Appreciate it. Anybody else you speak? Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, City Council, my name is Lucas Smith. I live at 4820 Clubhouse Drive. My house backs up to the proposed lots. So I understand you'll vote clearly on the right of way. The cul-de-sac, she was crystal clear that cul-de-sac does not meet city guidelines. I believe the city should vote. If you ask, Mr. Garber, you asked, I believe you should take in consideration and treat this like it should be a normal cul-de-sac. Clearly is not. The other thing is, I know you won't vote on this, but city regulations in the subdivision rules state that a home cannot have vehicular traffic on 3 sides. I know this is not what you're supposed to vote on or what you're being instructed to vote on. But if this driveway is put in, I will have vehicular traffic on 3 sides of my home. It does not state that traffic has to come from the street. It strictly states vehicular traffic. I believe this is a danger. It's against the rules and that. And then the other thing is this proposal was brought to the city on October of 22. And I think there's rules there about, I'm sorry, I'm extremely nervous too. Since October of 22, the golf course has torn out the trees all along the creek that runs on the west side of our home. All of these homes. And then, so I believe that the drainage for that creek has been changed drastically. At a minimum, I believe the city should ask that another evaluation of that land, and if it is adjusted or changed, the floodplain should be done at a minimum to protect the homeowners in that neighborhood and around there. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Anybody else want to speak?
Hi, my name's Joe Hanshoe. I live at 4806 Augusta Drive, which is just kind of up there at the top of the Augusta Drive circle. I've recently moved to Falcon Lakes Villas, and this particular shot that they haven't shown you tonight, I understand what they're talking about is the easement of the knuckle. But this other piece of paper that was also in the papers with the planning commission shows the locations of the homes that they plan to put there, which you had asked about. As I was reading through information, the thought that crossed my mind was that this was defeated 2 years ago. And in the defeat is stated, the application was submitted to the planning commission requesting approval of a short form plat to add 2 additional family homes. Staff recommended denial regarding location, regarding concerns over traffic, reducing open green space, and the location of the sanitary sewer easement running diagonally across both proposed lots. Now, it did say in there that their solution for the easement is just to say that they're not going to bear any responsibility for it. It'll be at the homeowner. I'd sure like to know if those homeowners will be properly informed of that. Also, obviously, if they go in and build houses in there, it will reduce the green space that's available. And the concerns over traffic, I don't see where they've really reduced the traffic. If anything, they're probably working on trying to increase the traffic. So the very reason that this proposal was rejected in 2020, I don't see that there's really been any solutions presented for that rejection. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
My name is Jerry Gregory, and I live in the current on Clubhouse Drive, the current cul-de-sac. It doesn't have a name, it's just Clubhouse Drive, so it is from the city. I'm still concerned about safety. Because even though Mr. Strife has told us that, you know, the golfers at that driving range don't drive the balls that far, the Smiths have found buckets of balls in their yard and in that back green space. When it's mowed, you can see them. If there is to be a hard surface driveway running down through that lot to a house built to the west of the sewer easement. That's a great surface for a ball to bounce and then spring straight back up into the side of the house. I think I'm also concerned. I sent a letter to everybody on several concerns that I have and a potential appearance of double standards in pulling back the vote and the reasons for it and not allowing emotional pleas. So I would ask that you all look at that because there was an emotional plea the last time we met for the house being put in on Independence Street. Finally, I think I'm 70 and I'm a brand new bicyclist. I hadn't bicycled since I was somewhere in my 20s. So I'm more aware of lines of sight and view on that street. And just when I'm walking along Clubhouse Drive, the road reaches a bit of a crest right about where that proposed bump out would be. And for cars driving south, turning onto Clubhouse from the north, and for cars driving north, there's a little bit of a visibility problem because of the crest of the road right there, right about the place where these cars would be backing out of these two driveways. And so I don't think with this depth that would solve the problem of safety. So two safeties there, one for the driving range, one for the backing out. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
My name is Janet Johnson. I'm at 4805 Augusta Drive. And just after listening to everything tonight, I can't see where this little space here, it would be enough for the people that, if these two houses are built, for them to back and turn around and drive out. I mean, it looks to me like they would just back out onto Clubhouse Drive. And then you were mentioning emergency vehicles. Can you imagine a fire truck pulling in there or a rescue unit? There's no way they could turn around and drive out. They would be backing out to Clubhouse Drive. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. Yes, sir. Okay.
So 2 years ago, just we proposed a house that was here near the easement. And the other house. We then added, this is nearly 1 acre lot. More than 2 to 3 times most of the villa lots. And so the house is back here, the driveway will be, on plans that we've submitted, such that pulling out of the garage, adequate space to turn around, the cars will be going up to the cul-de-sac. They won't have to back up. As you come out of your own garage space, paved area for the back out.
Marty, can you go ahead and state your name and address for the record, please?
It's Mark Stripe, Park Lane's Golf Club, 4605 Clubhouse Drive.
Thank you.
Thanks. So then by putting the house from here to here or away from that easement, house in here is well away from it. This easement continues and is very close to the Smith's house. But we'll be far enough away from it. That's all I have.
Thank you. Yeah. Any more questions from anybody on the council?
I think the easement and maintenance question is a good one. Are there other easements that we know of where driveway or other private property is over the easements, and has the city had concerns with that in the past?
There is at least one other instance in the Falcon Lake subdivision where we have property very near a sanitary sewer easement.
Anything else from any of the council?
I'm gonna say I appreciate everybody's emails and phone calls and for the one or two that stopped by. For those that aren't aware, this is be on my 21st anniversary of living in Falcon Lakes here next month, so very aware of the situation and people's thoughts out there. We'll continue to move this forward as appropriately as we can.
Anybody else? So Marty, you say that they'll be able to turn around in their driveway? What do we need the cul-de-sac for? Okay, just,
So if this is suggested by the third party engineering firm, I think from my understanding. The purpose was, you know, that we had a vehicle, like an express truck or something that they could park out here. I'm not, staff would be able to, we were just asked to, consider it, put it in the plan. So maybe some comment.
I would clarify, it's not a cul-de-sac.
okay, knuckle cul-de-sac, okay, so I left the word knuckle on, still, would be the purpose of that?
Insert, I guess, something from the staff, because the city engineering, third party engineering firm suggested it be adopted.
Am I misstated when I say that driveways cannot go directly abut to the clubhouse drive? Is that
So
incorrect?
I'll jump in on this one. Thank you, Councilmember Simpson. Thank you, Councilmember Phillips, for the question. As you know, we do have main thoroughfares based on the designation of the classification of the street within the city that have driveways that directly back out onto the roadway. That's not an ideal situation. And in this particular instance, you have a roadway clubhouse drive that has a designation that, just from a pure professional standard, you'd prefer to not see driveways exiting directly onto that street based upon the volume of traffic. And on the flip side of that, this property, although the use has been for a driving range, it is zoned R1, meaning by right, this property can have a home constructed on it. Really, the question for the council is, how do you want to allow that home or homes to occur? And do you want to deviate from the standards and allow driveways to deposit directly onto the street, which is why this plat was originally denied when it was presented to you, because the original proposal would have been driveways directly onto the street frontage, which staff said was not a good situation. And so this was the alternate plan to not have that direct connection to your roadway. At the end of the day, by right, this property owner has, I hate to keep repeating it, but the right to develop a home on R1 zoned property. And the question for us is, how best do you want to allow that to occur?
Is the entire driving range zoned R1?
The entire golf course is zoned R1. The whole golf course. Every hole is zoned R1.
Thank you.
So Leslie, I guess, again, to confirm what's in front of us is accept or decline. If that right of way is not accepted, what does that mean?
If the right of way is not accepted, then Mr. Strife would have to determine if he wants to construct that and maintain it privately. Establish his own instrument by which those property owners would maintain the knuckle. And then you would have a sewer that does not have an easement for any future maintenance. I mean, that's to be as direct as I can in answer to the question, that's the outcome is he still has a valid plat and he can still come in and apply for a building permit. And then the question is, he has to demonstrate how he is going to privately maintain the knuckle. And then we have a sewer that doesn't have an easement. And I realize that's not an ideal outcome, and I understand I also understand it's not a popular answer, but that's the answer.
Anything else from anybody? A lot to think about.
There is, I go back to the easement. I just personally haven't ever seen an easement go what looks like straight through the middle of two properties. I mean, I think without that, if it was to go along or run parallel with the road or something in the manner, I think I would feel less inclined in what I'm feeling today. But I mean, literally it runs directly through the middle of both of those. And I got to only assume that's why they didn't originally plat that as two properties in the very first place when they developed this property back in 2002. Right? I mean, that would be my only assumption. So.
I would just maybe add to that, just when Falcon Lakes is discussed, and I've been here for 4 years, but when when property owners come and discuss Falcon Lakes, I hear a consistent message, and I think it's a good message. It's, we have a cohesive development. I often hear the word a planned development. Planned development has a very specific and precise meaning in the planning world. Falcon Lakes was not a planned residential development. It was, and it actually has multiple zoning classifications that exist within the development. And, Falcon Lakes, as those of you who live there know, is a development that went through the recession, and it didn't survive the recession, and it changed property owners and hands. And as those property transactions were occurring, the golf course pre-existed, and there were never any instruments put in place to, I will say, protect or preserve what many people have commonly referred to as green space and open space. That's actually all zoned R1 space. And, there were no deed restrictions placed on any of the property that exists as the golf course or the driving range today. And we have a property owner who privately owns it, who is asking to use it in the manner in which it's zoned.
I will repeat what I just heard. We had something originally approved in 1999, 24 years ago. And we have 3 or 4 or 5, 3 various owners. 24 years to correct instances. So are we just compounding errors upon errors? I don't need a response to that, but 3 developers, 24 years, it's hitting its stride. And we've never corrected things in those 25 years. I put the onus on the city at some point for not correcting some of that. And I just feel like we're doubling down on some issues. I really don't comment to that. That's my personal comment.
Anybody else before I move on?
No.
Okay, move on to item number 5. PSP 004 22, site plan for new parking lot at Falcon Lakes Club driving range.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, this is for informational purposes only. The planning commission did approve this. The applicant is requesting to build a driveway to go near the driving range, which I think we've heard over and over again is much needed in this area for various reasons. The applicant is proposing a 16,782 square foot parking lot with access off of Falcon Lakes Drive, which would include approximately 50 parking spaces. 2 of those would be ADA compliant. This went to our engineering firm that everything meets our regulations. Our engineering firm doesn't have any outstanding comments. This, again, this is informational purposes only. The planning commission did approve this. I'll answer any questions you may have about it.
Are there any questions?
So does this have action at the next meeting?
No, sir. Our zoning regulations state that unless the planning commission by majority vote requests that the city council further consider this, or the applicant request within 7 days of the planning commission's determination, that the city council take action on it. So the planning commission did not request the city council to take action, and I don't anticipate Mr. Strife requesting action, though he does still have 6 days to do so. So I guess I should say maybe, but unlikely.
Crystal, are there lights on here? Or street lights?
That is a really, Cameron, no, sorry, this was Cameron's case.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I'm
Apologize.
presenting it. I should have known the answer to that. I did not. I'm sorry. No.
Only reason I say that is I think of just down by our park, we have a little parking lot right there and it has one light. And that tends to gather hoodlums. So if that light's out, then people gather there after hours. And I'd rather not see this. I know that, excuse me, private property of Mr. Strife's. And I'd hope that he would, and he does his best, obviously, getting those individuals removed, but there are obviously homes directly across the street from here, and any lightage of any sort to make sure that there aren't people gathering there would be appreciated.
Thank you.
Any other questions about that? Okay. Move on to, actually, which I moved up to 13 PRZ -003 -22. Pinehurst rezone, PRZ 00322.
I will quit talking eventually, I promise. This is the preliminary development plan for a planned residential district. This is in conjunction with a rezoning request also at 155th and Pinehurst. It's approximately a 4-acre tract of land located on the south side of Pinehurst. It's currently zoned as CP2, which is our general business zoning district. Mr. Riley has requested that this be downzoned to planned residential, again, to allow for 5 units. Each unit would have 5 buildings. Each building would have 9 units within it. There would also be attached enclosed parking or garages on the lower level of this. This is a preliminary development plan, and again, it's in conjunction with the rezoning request. There were a couple of deviations that were requested from Mr. Riley. One of those is to reduce the building setback line from 35 feet to 25 feet. The zoning regulations does provide a provision where the planning commission and the city council can grant that in a planned residential zoning district, if it is in the best interest of the development and it's not detrimental to nearby properties. And then additionally, our architectural standards require that or state that you can have no more than 3 garages on any one facade. This development actually has 4 garage doors on one facade. Again, a deviation is allowed when appropriate. Mr. Riley has proposed to use 2 different garage door styles in order to kind of break it up so it doesn't look like just one giant garage door. The planning commission did hear both of these items last night. The planning commission recommended approval of the rezoning and the subsequent preliminary development plan. This item will be required to for the city council to take action later this month.
Anybody have any questions?
Can you, I know some of this had vacant land around of it and some of it has homes. Is there a map that we could see that?
There's a site plan there and Patty, there could be, I think, in that packet. So to the north is, while Maddie's looking for that, sorry, Maddie. To the north is commercial. That's all been developed as commercial. To the south is a planned residential zoning district that has been developed as single family residential. And then to the east and to the west, to the west, excuse me, is where the memory care facility is going. And then to the east is currently a vacant piece of ground. There we go.
So here on the left, that's the memory care facility.
To the west, correct?
To the west, yeah.
Is that property line all the way up to it with the expansion? It'll be pretty close to that.
The property, yeah, that's directly adjacent.
Thank you.
With the landscapes.
Anybody else have any questions or comments to make?
I saw one of the exceptions, deviations was density, and is it just setbacks that prevents that from being the high density metric?
That would actually be a great question for Mr. Riley. The setback was, some of those buildings are 25 feet from the property line. And I think that, again, for the overall development of the land, I think that would be a good question for Mr. Riley.
Mike, would you like to get up and address that, please?
Yeah. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Mike Riley, 608 Delaware, Leavenworth, Kansas. Thank you for the time tonight. I can give a little history and then answer questions if that's okay. So this property was originally platted in 2006. So we are dealing with a plat that again 17 years old. And over the course of that time, you can see what has been developed and what hasn't. The balance of the vacant ground out there did suffer through 2008 and went back to the bank. Many of the vacant properties were sold. In fact, all of them were sold at auction about a year and a half ago. I bring that up because this design, was originally platted as commercial C2, which is, from a use standpoint, is very broad in the city of Bayshore. Fast food restaurants, bars, taverns, retail centers, retail outlets, things of that nature. So the uses are varied. So when we purchased this site about a year and a half ago, my first order of business was to meet with the neighborhood because obviously I know they're directly affected. The two cul-de-sacs directly to our south, I invited to a meeting at the Bayshore Library to just get their thoughts, recognizing that Bayshore today is in a different spot than it was 17 years ago. And I know the best case scenario for people that back up to lots is for nothing to happen, that remains a vacant lot forever. And that's no longer going to be the case in the city of Bayshore. I can tell you there's just far too many eyes on the city of Bayshore. There's far too much growth happening. And so the likelihood that this will develop either as commercial or another use is very, very likely in the very near term. And so my message and my conversation with the members of the two cul-de-sacs I invited and those that showed up were, I had a blank slate. I didn't have a plan at that time. I wanted to make sure that they knew that it was zone C2, that a fast food restaurant, a sit-down restaurant, an office building, a retail center could go in directly behind their houses. And if they didn't like that, that we would entertain other options. The other option being a multifamily project. At the time, and for those members that showed, and I'm by no means suggesting that every member showed, but we had roughly 18 to 20 people come from those cul-de-sacs. I took away from that they were open to a multifamily project, that the unknowns of commercial scared many of them. There were several contingencies with that. And then we went to work to hire architects, engineers to design pretty much what you see here tonight. We had a second meeting and rolled that out again to the members of the cul-de-sac. The HOA president came. Again, we made it open to everybody, but just to show them what a multifamily project could look like. Again, I got some somewhat positive feedback. And so we continued to move forward with where we are tonight. So, we designed the project, albeit it is an apartment building and an apartment complex. We designed it to look more like a condo building in the sense of when you think of an apartment complex, an apartment building, you have, a building and sea of asphalt for open parking, right? And you have open staircases or closed stairwells where there are community entrances and things of that nature. These buildings are designed to be self-sufficient for each unit. Every unit, with the exception of one in every building, has its own garage. So 8 of the 9 units in every building has its own garage, some 2 car, some 1 car. Every unit in the building effectively has its own front door. So there is no, centralized staircase. There is no outdoor staircase. So it is an apartment building, no question about that. It's multifamily in nature, but it does, in my opinion, resemble more of a condo-esque type property than an apartment complex. We thought about a multifamily project for this site, really going in conjunction with what has taken place just to the west of this particular lot. and that is the memory care and the assisted living. Both of those lots have been rezoned to R3, the same effective zoning class for density that we would be under. Ours is just a planned district. And so we thought with what had been taking place to our west, this made sense. And it made sense of a known project versus an unknown commercial project. You're taking up a Taco Bell later tonight, and it was approved last night at planning. That particular use could go in there today with no input from anybody, as long as it met base or planning documents and presented the right, building permit. So I by no means think this is a perfect plan for everybody in the room or everybody behind us. We did our best, in my opinion, to try to take their concerns into place and into into consideration as far as what we were designing. Several things they wanted to make sure we did was no more than 2 stories. They no question they would prefer 1 story. It just doesn't work with a 1-story product. So they didn't want more than 2 stories. They wanted a landscape buffer. And quite honestly, they're dealing with some very difficult drainage issues sitting there today from the original development of Pinehurst, where a storm pipe was effectively opened from Pinehurst Drive and is just daylighted kind of on the corner of this lot right now. So rainwater, stormwater from Pinehurst Drive is dumping on the corner of our lot and the memory care lot, creating a really big drainage problem for the neighbors downstream. Really that should have been tied into their detention pond all the way at the south of the property. But didn't happen, and there's no easements to make it happen. So we've really done all we can from an engineering standpoint yet today to alleviate that problem, fix that problem, and work with the memory care detention facility as well, so that we are both doing what we can to fix the drainage issue out there. It's not an easy task. And the engineering work isn't done on that. This is purely preliminary development. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. Mr. Councilmember, I'm not sure.
Yeah, just asking about the density. Like you said, it's just shy of what that residential marker would be. So is there, I understand the request for deviation, and obviously increasing the density adds to the height and the setback restrictions, but.
So we're under density from the zoning class code. We're not asking for a deviation in the amount of density allowed. We're simply asking for a deviation in the setbacks. What we wanted to make sure, and if you could go to the plat where we show the buildings, we wanted to make sure that spine that goes through the property from an access standpoint was large enough for emergency vehicles, all those kind of things. From a design perspective, what we've done is the front of the buildings effectively will be Pinehurst Drive, will be shown from Pinehurst Drive, along with everybody to the south will see effectively the front of the buildings. The garages are on the interior of the property. So the garages face the spine. Garages will not face the exterior properties to the south or the visual from Pinehurst Drive. So we needed this spine to be large enough to accommodate that traffic, emergency traffic. And as a result of that, the setbacks from the front, and this basin came into play late as well. We originally had a plan for 1 detention basin, but again, with the drainage issues out there, we wanted to make sure we tried to help that.
Where's the drainage issue at on there?
So right now, this pipe you see right here is just that. It's open ended. It is a storm pipe that comes, I believe it comes directly from this catch basin on Pinehurst Drive. Catches the storm water here and dumps it here. Oh, get the trash, get the drainage along with that. The neighbors have commented to me about that. They're the ones dealing with it right now, and we're doing what we can with Basin B swales along with the memory care facility, what they're doing to try to correct as much.
Anybody else have any questions? Mike?
Well, probably just the same issue of land out. That's not gonna be a private street through there, is it?
Is it not going to be a private street?
Right, between the north and the south?
That's not a public street.
Okay,
That's maintained by, that is a private
So it is the same thing as what's happening at Landau.
I'm not familiar. with
Okay,
that.
okay, okay.
Sorry about that.
I understand, Mike. I understand, Mike. Well, Gene? We'll be able to get in there and clean that out if we need to.
It would be a private.
Okay,
Private.
for now. I mean, that's what it sounds like for now.
Gene, I guess what he's really asking, if for some reason something happens down the road, are you gonna be able to get your equipment in there?
Yes, it'll be the width of the city street.
Okay.
And for the 2 units that are nearest the homes, is there going to be any buffer fencing, trees, whether that's evergreen, deciduous, anything like that?
Yes, ma'am. So we presented a landscape plan. It obviously needs to be developed a little further, but there is going to be a buffer along that property line. We have talked fencing. We haven't committed to fencing. We know the neighbors do have some fencing. Their HOA, I believe, restricts their fencing to be high and ornamental only, so they don't have privacy fences. I didn't, standing here tonight, I don't know if they would want a 6-foot privacy fence backing up to them or not. It would directly go against their HOA. That's something that we've talked to the neighbors quite a bit. We've had 3 meetings. We're certainly open to being good neighbors and doing what makes sense. So if that's something they want, we'll come back with a little bit deeper landscape plan for the file.
Anybody else? Okay.
Thank you.
Crystal, did you have anything else before I open it up? Okay.
No, Mr. Mayor.
Open up for some comments from the public.
Hello, I'm Chester Wilson. I live at 817 155th Terrace. And the Pinehurst Estates HOA president. And we have some of our residents here with us. And from the first meeting, there's been 3 meetings on this. I think the middle meeting I wound up missing. I was on TDY. But on the first meeting, sure, not wanting commercial and wanting residential was a great idea. But we were expecting something more closely matching. Use the term consistency a lot in your terminology here tonight, more consistent, which would be like single family or duplex type villa type living. And with the development of the assisted living and the cognitive care, an easy thing to envision would be single family duplex type homes where one senior member can live alone and then walk over and visit their other senior member that's in there. Something supporting that medical aspect would be a better proposal. Right now, I have a petition signed and notarized with 82 signatures opposing the rezoning in general. And that's largely because of the 45 homes multiplied by however many people are in there. You could potentially have up to probably 135 packs. That's a lot of people to have access right in your backyard. I mean, I think everybody that lives here are good enough of them right here, just right there with their kids. And having unfettered access, people that you don't know in fairly large numbers right behind your house. You have multifamily development zones already by the new elementary school, and I think over by the Baser Library. Does Baser really need another one like this? The other thing is when I went around and beat the concrete and got petitions, I had several members of people that moved from Piper, specifically Olathe and Shawnee. And when their developments had apartments grow up around them, their crime rates went up. And that is probably one of our big concerns. There's never been an adequate study on increased emergency services for the increase in population and schooling as well. And we would just encourage you to kind of rethink this and rethink the plan, or go with
stay with the commercial and purposely put in another medical or care facility that might be along that line consistent with what's already there. And with that, I know that I got less than a minute left. The other thing is on variances. The preferred design would be the previous design you showed us that was 2 feet too high. You know, if this wound up going through, and if you're approving lots of variances, I think that would be an easy one to do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Hi, I'm Katie McSweeney and I live at 831 155th Circle. I am this lovely home right here. August is like the closest. The back of my home is probably about 20 feet to this project. So I look forward to getting to know you all more and speaking with you guys at a different time because this just is just incredibly dear to my heart. Thank you for hearing our neighborhood out tonight. We hope that you can take just a close look at the countless emails, videos, photos, and signatures on our petition that our neighborhood and neighborhoods near us feel very strongly against this project. I have a very long list of how this affects just my personal home, my family, and just my little neighborhood, including many safety issues, as kind of was stated that we have 4-foot wrought iron fencing and possibly allowing over 100 people with close proximity with no barrier to my home is pretty scary. But we just wanted to focus tonight on some of the reasons that we feel apartments in the specific lot are not a right fit for the community as a whole. If you add a commercial building, we would collect sales tax and benefit our community. A city park in that area would benefit citizens on the south side of State Avenue. An additional senior care living center would benefit the aging citizens of our community. If you sincerely believe that Basehor would benefit from multifamily housing, we do feel like there are lots that better serve this that are not in people's backyards. So if that is something you feel strongly about, there are lots that accommodate better traffic flow than the dangerous intersection of 155th and State Avenue that just recently have had 2 major accidents. So we're going to be adding a gross influx of traffic in that area. One location being right behind here that has a large area, and then being southeast on 158th of the library. Please also consider how many new home developments are already going in here in Basehor. Our schools are already full. The reason my husband and I moved here was for the schools. We have 2 small children that are 4 and 1. They have an amazing reputation, hence why we moved here. But in order to keep those excellent schools and reputation, you must accommodate growth of children, but also the citizens' relation to traffic, first responders, and all overall infrastructure. We sincerely ask you to pore over our heartfelt statements made by our neighbors that include more than just our neighborhood, to please not pass this multifamily unit that is literally in our backyard. I would honestly invite you to my home so I can show you my backyard and how narrow of a border there is. We do feel this is detrimental to our neighborhood and surrounding neighborhoods, and we've voiced our opinion at every meeting clearly that we oppose this. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Good evening, Mayor. My name is Doug Albertson. I live at 835 155th Circle. I'm her neighbor. And this is my household. I moved to Basehor 8 years ago. And I've lived there since pretty early on. Like we're in a place for 1 year temporarily until that house became available. And the area has really grown now. That whole plat's filled out now. When we were there originally, there's probably 10 homes. And I understand, and we were fully aware that it was commercial C2 and what could go in there. I attended all 3 meetings, which he didn't have to host anything, but he did. And he did engage us early on. It's just the first meeting, what was put to us was in the discussion. Basically villas, single story. That would be more blended in with our area. The second meeting, there was probably 5 or 6 of us. Over at one of his homes over there, at my home. And that's when the apartments came up, 2-story. Wasn't as thrilled about that, but I understand he owns the land, he has the right to approach and request to do through the process what he is trying to do with it. I personally feel that having that many people is gonna really put more strain on the infrastructure of the corner. And the only alternatives, if you can't increase throughput at 155th and 2440, is to either go well before near the construction place and go around to residential, or right there on 158th. I don't know how it's gonna turn out, but I don't see it doing much good for that traffic flow. There is gonna be probably pretty miserable. We get lucky to get 4 or 5 cars through there right now. But and what Chuck said, there were 2 plans. What you saw, it's 2 feet would require a 2-foot variance. That's preferable to the alternative he showed us. And I don't know if he has any pictures of that to make available, but I just would request that you give some consideration, anything you receive between now and in your decision.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Anybody else? Okay. Move on then. Moving on to item number 6, discussion and draft memorandum of understanding MOU between the city of Basehor and the Basehor Community Volunteers.
Mayor, thank you, Leslie Riverola, City Administrator. The item that you have in front of you this evening is still very early draft form. As I believe most members of the City Council are aware, the Basehor Community Volunteers hosts each year a 4th of July parade, as well as a 4th of July fireworks celebration. We do have Mr. Lou Lewis of the Basehor Community Volunteers here this evening. Mr. Lewis, thank you for being here. Mr. Lewis approached us in March of 2022, notifying the city that Mr. Derringer, who has graciously donated his time and talent for many years to shoot off the fireworks, plans to retire from his volunteerism beginning after the 2023 season. So the request from Basehor Community Volunteers to the city was that the city consider taking over the fireworks. The city council, we had a conversation related to the fireworks. Mr. Lewis was here, as was Mr. Derringer. I believe it was October of 2022. And we discussed what different options might be available for the city to consider. The consensus that staff believed that we heard from the city council was that we'd like to find a way to be able to support the Basehor Community Volunteers to continue to host the 4th of July celebration, specifically the fireworks, that the city of Basehor didn't have the appetite to take on staffing, running, and administering that event. As such, Maddie Waldeck and I did meet with Mr. Lewis and approached the idea of perhaps the city funding the fireworks beginning in the year 2024. And that is the draft agreement that you have in front of you. Based upon cash basis law, we wouldn't be looking for you to actually adopt or approve the MOU this year. Instead, we would be looking for the city council to have a resolution of intent that really sets forth and establishes the parameters related to the budget, so that we ensure, as we're preparing the budget, that we budget appropriately in 2024. And then based on cash basis law, we would continue to annually appropriate based upon the direction and feedback of each city council. We did just very preliminarily have a conversation with the Chamber of Commerce. You know, we tried to explore, are there other partnerships that may be available for the city to leverage? So this really didn't just become a city focus. As you know, we have many other taxing jurisdictions that reside in Basehor beyond the city of Basehor. This has never been a city of Basehor event. It didn't start as a city of Basehor event. And the chamber said that essentially they may have an interest in considering it, but didn't really commit to anything. I did approach the idea or concept with Mr. Lewis just via email, and very much appreciated his feedback, which is, you know, they really already kind of tapped the Chamber of Commerce for various other funding support and to help promote scholarships and the other community events that they put on. So in recognition of that, staff's recommendation to you, to the governing body, is to consider the city being the sole and exclusive sponsor of the fireworks for 2024. And then if you want to continue to explore that in future years, we certainly can at the city council's discretion. I put a placeholder amount in here for $25,000. The MOU speaks to how we would compensate the Basehor community volunteers for the fireworks, and assuming that they need to get, not assuming, a licensed pyrotechnician. That assumes that Mr. Derringer or someone that he has been working with does not desire to continue in future years. Because at one point, when Mr. Derringer was here, which unfortunately he left, had talked about maybe there may be potentially other people that he's been working with that might consider taking this task on. So I'm happy to answer questions. I'm sure Mr. Lewis may have comments that he might want to offer.
Before I open up the discussion, Loser, you want to say anything?
The only thing I would say is reading through the agreement and stuff like this, Mayor and Council, is the fact that some of the things in there, I would ask, I'd want more definition of some of the values in the agreement. And I think we have time. For instance, you know, what happens if basically the standpoint, it's written more on the city side. What would happen if Basehor community volunteers went by the wayside? You know, that's one of the other side is, what if down the road, you know, sponsorship, community exclusive sponsorship of that whole thing would be in the standpoint is, what if all of a sudden fireworks go out of sight and people trying to shoot them off, the price goes above 25,000. You see what I'm saying? Where would we get other monies from? I mean, yeah, I think it's a workable agreement. I think it's just pieces that we have to work through. And time frame wise, I know she said something in the agreement, it talks about an April 23rd meeting, something like that. I can tell you that won't work. I'm gonna be in Europe, so that ain't gonna happen.
Any
And I'm
questions?
open for questions, anything or you would.
Historically, was it around $25,000 is what the costs were?
You know, we get around $8,000, I think was the top side, 8,500. But I think what she's putting into that is the fact is Danny and those people basically retired. He's not for 35 years, charge nothing for it. If we have to go out and get somebody to do that, it's going to cost you somewhere between $10,000 or $15,000.
Well, if I get to shoot off $25,000 worth of fireworks, I'm gonna do it. So I'll volunteer. Yeah.
Start working on your license.
In all seriousness.
You're getting for.
I was just trying to check to make sure that you weren't spending $35,000 in fireworks. Okay.
I think from the budgeting standpoint, we'd always come back and tell you what our budget could be and then what allowances, you know, fireworks are going up all the time. So it's a matter of what those numbers would be. And then in time frame, when do you need those numbers? Because if you're budgeting in October and most fireworks have increases in prices in January. So that's the kind of things I'm talking about right there. You gotta have a little give and take there. I think we're willing to take it back on. I think the concern was basically from our standpoint, not having a tremendous amount of money in the bills. was to be able to basically fund it. But the other side of it is also the site that you need to shoot it off. We're getting to the point where the parameters for the football field will not match what we need in the future. We'll have to move it someplace, and that's gonna be a problem.
Yeah, you have any suggestions of where we
Well,
could?
somebody talked about the field of dreams, and I had a couple other people say there's a school that we could put it around. Property in the backside of that school, we could do it with. So that's some of the things we're looking at.
I guess I would ask. Okay, this is a thought, this isn't an ask. But we also have other taxing entities such as the school, the library, fire department, and others whose same citizens and same people are going to this event. So should we burden this alone, or is it worth at least a request and a conversation on, this is a community event that impacts us all? Would they be willing to share whatever pro rata? I mean, we can figure out the pro rata piece. It's more a thought than anything else at this point.
Well, and do some cities go to like local businesses and ask for help? I mean, or are we just wanting to handle this as the city as far as the funding and the staffing?
So that's a great question, Councilmember Standiford. I think that was kind of staff's original thought as well, was could the chamber help maybe shoulder this opportunity, and would they have an interest in sponsoring these events? And I think it was, and I don't want to speak for Mr. Lewis. My understanding from Mr. Lewis's communication back was that they really weren't looking to the chamber to do that because they asked the chamber to sponsor other things. So.
Let me see if I'm clear. We do not have a person that could run this
In terms of
pyrotechnics.
no, the only one we have is Danny Garrett.
Okay, and he's not available?
He is, if he decides to not retire, but
Okay, so,
that's the threat. When his son had his problems,
okay,
he's gonna retire.
okay, so it's really iffy is what I'm hearing you say. Okay, so if I take the iffiness part out of it, we either need to have someone that is a pyrotechnic specialist, or we don't have one that's a pyrotechnic specialist.
I would step in real quick and say somebody that's also kind enough to give their time away for free and not charge,
We're still back to that same point.
which is what's been occurring thankfully for the city to be able to afford to do this.
Right, right. We're still back to that same point. We're still back to that iffy piece. So $25,000 for an iffy. Or $25,000 for something that's solid. Can we get someone that's solid that can do it?
The way that the MOU is really structured, the city would not be involved in any way in procuring or identifying the pyrotechnician. This agreement as it is proposed truly contemplates the city as the financier, if you will, and the event remains solely it is a Basehor Community Volunteers event. It remains Basehor Community Volunteers' responsibility to ensure it. To ensure that they've hired or have someone retained that is a licensed, insured pyrotechnician, that they are responsible for securing the site. And so whatever site they use, that they have either worked out their own arrangement or that site has given them some sort of indemnity to shoot them there. This suggested arrangement is truly you financing so that they can continue in the event that they don't have somebody who's volunteering their service, which is why we came up with the $25,000 when we looked at what other cities and municipalities were investing in fireworks. That seemed to be about the range. Again, this may not be the perfect budget number. I think we would want to work with Mr. Lewis and the Basehor Community Volunteers if this is something that the city council wants to do.
So that goes back to the April 23rd meeting.
I don't,
Because by then, we need to know yay or nay.
This is for 24, correct?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I'm aware. We're, you know.
yeah, I'm sorry.
No, sorry, just that it doesn't have to come back next,
No.
in a couple weeks. It can,
Right.
but for budgeting purposes, the idea is a ballpark number. And then each year that can be evaluated, or that's, whether that's considered a hard limit or a rough value.
And staff did think this was timely in terms of getting some direction from the city council on your desire to perhaps enter into this sort of arrangement, because we are in the process of putting together the 2024 budget and anticipate a draft budget to you in early May. And whether or not to include funds in the 2024 budget for this activity is something that we're trying to make sure that we're responsive to.
Well, I know it seems to be pretty popular, the parade, the fireworks, there's usually a very large turnout. So I know it brings a lot of people to town. So I would like to see it continue if we can work on the MOU and all parties are agreeable.
And I still gotta bring up that veteran piece. I know me and Lou disagreed with this last time. But one veteran could not speak for all other veterans. There are veterans in this community that are still struggling with that shock, bang, boom.
Yeah, I think it's good that this is on the agenda with the next item on fireworks and restricting that time frame. And I think that's a factor to consider along with it.
I would just note, staff 100% recognizes that this contemplated amount is within the spending authority of the city administrator, but this is 100% a policy decision. And this is not a city event. And so if the city council desires to assist the Basehor community volunteers in this way, I felt it appropriate and important that the city council have a role in discussing and ultimately the decision on whether or not you wanted to fund this activity.
So to be clear, we're just simply talking about funding. We're not talking about ownership.
This is funding exclusively.
Right.
But since the funding request came exclusively to the city to just be very direct, the city then should be the one being noted as the sponsor and who made the fireworks possible.
Sponsorship is still different than ownership.
That is true.
So should we just bring this back to the next work session since we're not voting on it next meeting?
So we can do anything that the city council prefers. If the city council desires to proceed with discussing a funding arrangement, staff suggestion is that we put together a resolution of intent. Again, you're not entering into the memorandum of understanding because this is for a future year. We included the MOU again, just to provide some of that draft framework and language that we're talking about to make it very clear. We're not providing the insurance. We're not providing the site. We're not providing staff. This is not our event. So to directly answer your question, Councilman Garber, if you would like us to contemplate providing funding, and if you would like us to, we can bring a resolution of intent. That's not approving the MOU. The MOU will actually come back in 2024 when it's appropriate for you to be able to enter into it.
We're not in any danger of this year of not having fireworks.
I would defer to Mr. Lewis.
Okay, so we're good to go. So we need to really look at the future. We need to look at next year. Okay.
That is what we're looking at.
Make one other statement. Danny is a licensed fireman.
So you're taking some of those ifs out. I appreciate that.
Well, I'd be okay with a resolution. I don't know how the other council members feel, but
I agree.
I'm agreement.
Okay. Well, staff will prepare a resolution of intent for the April 26th meeting, and it's the council's prerogative whether you choose to take action on it or not.
Good. Moving on to item number 7, discussion or regulation of fireworks within the city. As you have a letter in front of you, I've got some calls last year and we talked a little bit about this. You have a letter here from Mrs. Carol Washington, asking that we change the number of days and the hours of fireworks. So that's if you guys want to leave it like it is, we'll just let it die here tonight. If you want to talk about it, we can talk about it and stuff. So I had, I think, 5 phone calls last year wanting us to change it, but that's totally up to what the council wants to do.
Felt like we talked about this already and we reviewed this once.
Yes.
And then within it, we had a couple other surrounding areas of what they did as well. Am I having information?
No,
You're
you're
not.
absolutely right. I think Cameron, was it Cameron that had the called the surrounding cities? Who was that?
I was comparing the actuals and how much they cost.
Okay. Didn't we call the surrounding city like Bonner and Lansing and all that at that time too? So,
But I don't think in regards to the schedule, when they allowed.
Yes.
yeah.
So this discussion item came up actually the last time that we discussed whether or not the city would take over the responsibility of the fireworks from the Basehor Community Volunteers, and the discussion just kind of stopped and said, well, we'll pick it back up at a later time. And so the mayor asked that it be brought back up tonight.
What's our current standard?
Your current standard is just in terms of when you allow fireworks to be shut off
Okay.
or to be discharged is on June 30th to July 3rd from 10 a.m. in the morning until 10 p.m. at night.
Okay.
July 4th, 9 a.m. to 11:59 p.m. And then on July the 5th, again, from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. And all other times of the year, it is prohibited within the city limits. And then you do have regulations within your code, which I provided the code section for you. Should the council desire to make an emergency declaration based upon weather conditions, you could actually prohibit them altogether based upon your finding of concerns related to weather.
Okay, so that sounds pretty solid.
Staff is not recommending any changes.
Well, I know I got a lot of complaints last year that it was too long, too many days.
That's
So,
what I heard.
and I even
Yeah,
had people start talking to me again already. So, I don't know if we want to consider, knocking a couple days off or shortening the time, but I do know that I've heard from some older folks and also parents with small children, because this does go in, to where some of that affects people's sleep and not even considering pets. So.
Mhm. And I bet that's.
I personally didn't have any complaints. Were there specific things that they were complaining about? Was it the loudness or was it the time of day? Or was it how often it was?
Yeah,
I mean, they're saying this is happening like for a week or.
If you look on here, we're the city that has the longest time frame of anybody around. Of course, a lot of cities don't even allow it at all. And then then all the cleanup. I mean, because unfortunately, and we know what happened last year because it was all over Facebook. People just don't pick up and clean up after themselves. So.
Some of us do.
Yeah.
Some.
Yeah.
Well, you already said you wanted to blow up 25.
Hey.
Fireworks.
That's got to learn how to be a pyrotechnic at this point.
No, it's gonna be pretty hard to, it'll be pretty hard to look at those timeframes. Days is easier to go and say, boom, no days.
Mhm.
But to say timeframes, then we're kind of getting into real difficult situations that is, I heard the term unmanageable used by the staff recently. it becomes pretty unmanageable to put these time frames. But if we cut off a day and say the 5th of July, there's none, pretty easy to identify that. You know, or June 30th, we say none, it's pretty easy to identify that. So if we carve off anything, carve off those days, but you know, okay, I'm being a patriot now, but that's the 4th of July. You don't have to say anything.
I wasn't planning to, just smiling, just taking the feedback.
And if I'm hearing this correctly, we're talking about maybe not reducing times, just simply removing a day or two.
I would recommend that, you know, timing is really hard to, you know, we have an excellent police department and having them go out looking at times versus days. Days is pretty much, we can identify that, we can target that, we can work on that. But times gets kind of challenging.
Well, it was to Chief, sorry, stuck down there on the end today.
Oh, I'm sorry, Chief. I didn't mean to-
What is, do you have concerns on current enforceability, or how do we respond to that? Do we look at it from a noise complaint standpoint too?
We wouldn't respond.
Okay.
I want the time to prepare something a little more, less opinionated and factual.
The reason I would like the times is, okay. Can't be out there at 3 in the morning blowing up.
Right.
These firecrackers 3 and 4 in the morning. These neighbors come, at least run out, yell at the kids for you, gotta quit at midnight.
Yeah, but it's only midnight till one day. The rest of it's supposed to be cut off at 10, so
Yeah,
I don't.
I think there's
see an
probably
issue there.
I think there's probably some self-policing in the neighborhood that goes on.
Yeah,
If it gets going too late, it's fall.
I agree.
I've not had in all my years up here any complaints brought to me for the fireworks. So I just haven't had it, so I don't have that side of it.
I didn't know if there was an appetite, if we can just leave it like it is, or we can change things. That's totally up to you guys.
I'm gonna tell you, outside of changing the time, I'm gonna change it 2 days. I leave it the way it is. That's my opinion.
I'm fine with leaving it how it is, and that's my personal opinion.
Yeah, I would recommend removing 1 to 2 days.
Removing 1 or 2 days.
So like going into June 30th, start like July 1st through July 5th.
Yeah.
It's just July.
Yeah.
I would be in support of that if you wanted to go July 1st through July 5th.
I mean,
Yeah, I don't know, probably helps a little bit. I think it's tricky because where does the weekend fall around that if people are doing it on the weekend before or after, but I'm okay tightening it up.
So what I'm hearing is you guys are saying starting July 1st from 10 to 10 and then leave everything else the same, July 4th till midnight and till July 5th till 10 p.m. Just the 4 days instead of the basically 5 days.
I don't have a hard opinion either way, that's not fine. with
Yeah.
whatever it feels like. But they like that, I'm fine.
Trust me, I don't go out and shoot them off anyway, so.
Mayor, if there is an appetite amongst the council, it might be helpful if staff did some additional research and provided what other cities are doing, and then that would give the chief an opportunity to also pull some just call history and let us really provide that analysis. The intent tonight was really just to determine whether the city council had an appetite to want to discuss this further, and it sounds like we
Well-
perhaps have a few that do. And so maybe we explore what other communities are doing and come back with a thoughtful staff recommendation related to this item.
I'll be happy to bring some concrete facts. As to how many calls would respond within that time frame.
Well, one thing else we need to keep in mind too is there's, I don't know, what, 5 or 6 different people that set up for fireworks, to sell fireworks. So we're gonna be cutting back on them to a day too. So where people are probably gonna go to different communities and buy the fireworks then instead of buying them here locally. So That's
Well,
one
would
thing to
shooting
keep
them
in
have an
mind.
effect though with selling them?
I mean, I think
Which-
so.
That's two different things.
Oh, yeah, a lot of people start July the. June
Well, yeah, I think they
30th and
can-
shoot them off. I mean, little stuff, not big stuff.
Yeah, I was just thinking that the shoot off days are separate from when the people are selling the product.
Yeah.
Cause I mean, you can go out in the country to your grandparents' house if you wanted to, and
Yeah, no, I agree, but I just saying that the people that open up on June 30th, usually they're pretty busy during that day, so. That's, again, that's.
but would they still be open on June 30th? To sell them? You just,
Are you, so
I
you're
mean,
saying.
that's-
they
I'm not
still
talking about
open up
the
to June
selling
30th,
them.
They can't.
I'm talking about
shoot 'em
shooting
off.
them in
Okay.
the city limits. Cause you could still go outside the city limits as long as you had the owner's permission
Well, and
to do
that's
so.
something that we could put in the, write it in the ordinance.
I don't want to affect anybody's sales.
Right, 'cause this is specifically discharge, so I think that doesn't impact the sell process. And that, I think that's even bigger deal on where the weekend falls, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think just discharge.
And because I don't want to hurt anybody on themselves.
Yeah, staff's understanding is we're only looking at the when can they shoot them, discharge
Yes.
them, not when can they sell them.
Right.
Yes. So yeah, I think maybe if we could find out a little more information, that'd be great. Cause like I said, I just fielded calls and emails and I've kept it on my radar. Just as respect to constituents that have reached out. So.
I certainly don't want to belabor your discussion, but if it's acceptable to the city council, I'm thinking maybe we bring this back in June. I mean, at this point, we are very close to the next work session. And so we wouldn't be looking at making changes to 2023. I mean, really, this would be 2024 and beyond, because we want to make sure that we are communicating with the public about any changes that happened as well.
I'm fine with that.
And use the newsletter and all of the tools we have available to us. And this really doesn't give us adequate time to do that. So.
So Leslie, given that, and maybe a broader question too, do we think there's any value in trying to put surveys out through that and ask for public input? Especially if there's one coming out around the 4th of July, as people are thinking about it and it's fresh on their mind to say, hey, would you like to see a change, a decrease, an increase, a time limit?
That's a great question. Councilmember Maples, as we explore what other communities are doing and bring back suggestions, we'll also bring back some suggested communications tools as well as ways we could solicit feedback from the community.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Any other questions? Move on. Okay, item number 8, resolution 2023-07, elected officials' terms of office.
Actually, I think it has my name on it and Maria's name on it, so I'll just take this. As the city council is aware, we, or you, not we, I'm not part of the governing body. The city council chartered out of the ordinance, the charter ordinance that designated when city council and the mayor assumed office after an election. Once the legislation changed from municipal elections in the spring to municipal elections occurring in the fall, the default date was January of the year following the election. So our local elections are in November, and then you have currently, as it sits today, you have approximately 2 months, give or take some time, between when the election happens and when new office holders either assume their new office or retain and continue on in their current capacity. The question really in front of you, once you chartered out of your, I think it was charter ordinance, oh goodness, which maybe charter ordinance 28. Sorry, I didn't want to give you the wrong number. The question that comes before you is you get to establish when elected officials would take office by resolution. And that date is set by the elected officials. And so we had you may recall, we had a pretty robust discussion on this item in the fall, and staff put together what other surrounding and area jurisdictions are doing in terms of when elected officials take office. As you can see, there's really not a consistent pattern. Some take office in December, some have continued to take office in January. You know, for what it's worth, staff's recommendation, there may be some value in trying to tighten up the lag time that exists in between the election and the January date that currently sits today. But again, that is 100% a policy decision of the governing body. And so we stand ready to answer questions or assist you in your discussion, however you see fit. We do need to take action at least sometime before November when the next set of elections happen. So. And I'm happy to stand for questions. And I apologize. I think I've become tongue tied the evening is late and we had a late meeting last night too.
Anybody have any questions for Leslie on this?
Is that referring to the official meeting or is a work session an option for the swearing in ceremony?
I would defer to legal counsel, but I believe in order for you to take office, you have to be in an officially called regular meeting. And we have actually been doing that by a special meeting in January, because right now your regular meeting date is not until the 4th Wednesday of January, which is inconsistent with the date.
I kind of like the way Mission Kansas wrote there, if you can tell me how we police that. Basically, it's our choice anytime after December 1 and no later than the second Monday in January. So that kind of gives us 6 weeks to say, no, we're doing this one right away. But I don't know if that creates a precedent issue or anything like that, if it needs to be tighter.
So that's actually what the state statute says. The statute provides a range that's between December 1st and January. So they've kind of copied the state statute. Other cities have narrowed it, so it's a predictable date.
So our regular meeting, that would be the 4th Tuesday, is that rearranged sometimes because of proximity to Christmas? Every time.
We have rearranged November and December every year
Okay, that's what I was thinking. So
to accommodate the holiday. And we usually also move up the work session.
So just based on that, you know, I think I've been pretty vocal about this last time. We need to give people time. So I do like the mission one. If we can, if it's certified in December, then so be it. But since we have historically manipulated the meeting dates in November and December, I think it's not wise for us to go ahead and try to make any decisions in November and December. Look at that January dates, pretty solid, happens every year. Those dates are not manipulated. Those dates are not changed.
but that second Monday is before our regular meeting in January still. So you're either moving or calling a special meeting either way, is what it's had to be historically. So if we just fix it on the regular meeting in December, even if that date moves, that stays a little more consistent.
You know, I just talked about the 4th of July, and then there's a significant holiday, also late December, that people are not gonna be here.
Mhm.
Over to January. My opinion, my humble opinion.
And just knowing it has to be a special meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I realize there's a lag time. I realize that. But we need to make sure the certifications are done. We need to make sure that people are gonna, you know, we're gonna have a quorum.
That's, yeah.
You know,
Quorum.
If we're calling a special meeting regardless, we're calling a special meeting to get this done. I still kind of like Mission Kansas one, because maybe we want to do it at the second week in December. Things are certified.
I agree with that solely off of the fact that just the awkwardness as well of the transition as well. Sometimes I completely agree with Vernon on the fact that we need to make sure we have all of our ducks in a row. But I also like the fact that we have the ability of arrange, and we're going to call a special meeting regardless. So why not have a range that starts December 1st?
I thought
Except the
transfer
mention-
always went well.
Yes, sir.
Okay, because I know last time I mentioned elections are not about buddy, kumbaya and all the other stuff. It's not. It's about people being elected to fulfill an office. And sometimes we need to take time for people that are in positions to finish out whatever work was being done, not to start new work, not to try to target people and say, hey, this is what the next council needs to work on. But there are, some people that have been on this council for a long time. There might be time, and I'm not saying me, but if I don't get reelected, then that's fine too. But to be able to give an opportunity to share, hey, look, it's been an amazing 12 years. Give them time to close that door.
But I think the concerns we had when this was brought up the first time were that if people, let's say we've got 3 people going up for election and you've got 3 new people coming in and the other individuals don't come to the meetings, the city shuts down for 6 to 8 weeks because you don't have a quorum to vote. So, that's why I think this kind of initially all came up anyway. So.
Well, that's what I mean. It's not a kumbaya, come on, folks. You ran for election, you lost. So now you're going to take your toys and you're going to want to go home and not play anymore. No, you need to fulfill your obligations. And I do agree with you, Sherry. I agree with you. But we need to look at, how do we, continue to manage the city? And if it means that the city's slowing down or shuts down, then we just have to look at the things before the election.
I would just maybe offer, if you want to provide a predictable date and also provide opportunity to make sure that the election office is able to certify results and do their canvassing, just based upon kind of the way our meetings have traditionally happened in December, you could set the second Wednesday in December as the date that they take office following the certification. So you have both a date and the certification component. And, our elections happen at the beginning of November. We still have a regular city council meeting. So let's just assume that you have members that are either not reelected or did not choose to seek office. They still have that opportunity. There's predictability on their end as well to say their goodbyes, to thank the public, for the city to be able to thank them for their service, and also to finish any work of that body that needed to occur prior to that December date. So that might be a compromise to provide predictability and date, and also kind of honor the tradition of making sure we avoid certain holidays in December.
Right. I agree.
Good.
Okay.
I like it.
Any
So-
more discussion?
We'll prepare a resolution for the second Wednesday in December following the certification.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Moving on, item number 9, resolution 2023-06, Mid-America Regional Council, MARC Transportation Program Fee.
Thank you, Mayor. I will make this short and sweet. As you know, the city received a significant amount of funding. We talked about that actually in your special meeting earlier tonight. The total amount is $6,362,629. When the city makes application to the Mid-America Regional Council, we know in advance of submitting those applications that there is a 1% transportation local program fee that is assessed. That's for their administration and oversight of these programs and dollars. That fee due from the city of Basehor is $63,626.29. That is part of our overall project budget. So this isn't coming out of money that is not already planned. But staff certainly suggests that we pay this fee so that we can receive this $1,362,629. And I suppose I'd be happy to answer questions about that.
I don't think there's gonna be questions. Yeah. I think just move it on.
And maybe consent agenda.
Consent agenda. Yes, absolutely.
Let's make this easy.
That's right.
Okay. PBDP -001 -23, PFDP -001 -23, PFP -001 -23, preliminary and final development plan and final plat for the Basehor Civic Campus.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's me again. These are obviously three items that are all in conjunction with one another. I think we all know we are ready to build a new city hall. The property where we're building the city hall is a planned residential zoning district, and as such, a preliminary and final development plan according to our city code was required, and also a final plat was required. This went to the planning commission back in March. As expected, the planning commission recommended approval of this. There are no deviations. The building, everything meets all of our code. This is very much just dotting i's and crossing t's and following our own rules. There are absolutely no exceptions being granted or being requested, excuse me. I'll answer any questions that you may have.
Anybody have any questions on that?
I think consent agenda on that one too,
Yes,
right?
sir.
I agree.
Okay.
Okay,
Good to see
consent
what all
agenda.
of these-
Moving on, item number 11, ordinance number 875, PADM 001-23, future land use text amendment.
Thank you. I believe that the council is aware, now obviously you're aware that you adopted a comprehensive plan late last year. But I believe that you are all aware that within that comprehensive plan, the final document that was presented, the consulting firm that we used for that, they accidentally put the incorrect future land use map in. You all and the planning commission had considered a draft document that had a future land use map in it that everybody agreed was the future land use map that we wanted to adopt. However, when the document came before you for final acceptance, your staff does not know how this happened, but the incorrect map was in there and it impacted a few properties. One of those properties is actually one that you heard earlier tonight, where the proposed future land use just does not match what was requested. By state statute, we had to take this back to the planning commission. We had to ask the planning commission to reconsider it. This is essentially reviewing your adopted comprehensive plan. And your staff recommended that the map that exists be replaced with the map that was intended. And so that's what we are proposing here. This will require an ordinance. We have a draft ordinance in there, of course, but this will affect three separate figures within the comprehensive plan. But we have the correct map. We are prepared to insert the correct map and to move on. And the planning commission recommended approval of this, of course.
Any questions?
Just to confirm, that is the one that was presented on screen at
Yes.
public comment periods. Okay,
Yes.
perfect.
Right map, right place, right time. This time.
Yes, I
Yeah.
think this got brought to my attention literally my first day here.
Okay.
Oh, by the way,
Yeah.
found this out. So-
I would just note, this is actually the map that was noticed for the official public hearing that occurred for this item. So this was the map that was intended when these packets were printed and distributed by our consultant. They swapped a prior version with this one. So this is the map that was actually noticed to the public and what you received official public hearing comment on.
I said it once, I'm gonna say it again. Right map, right place, right location. That's us.
Consent agenda?
Consent agenda.
I
Yep.
agree.
Good.
Yep. Consent agenda. Moving on, item number 12, Taco Bell site plan, PSP 001-23.
Again, Mayor, this is just for informational purposes only. Taco Bell has approached the city to locate a Taco Bell at the northeast corner of 155th and 2440 highway. They submitted a site plan as is required by our code. The building meets all of our architectural design guidelines, aside from the rear of the building does not have the required glazing. The rear of their building is their kitchen and bathroom facilities. So for obvious reasons, they don't want windows back there. The planning commission did grant that deviation, and again, as they have the authority to do. And just like the site plan we heard earlier this evening, this does not require any action on your part. The planning commission did not request that you all review it, and we don't expect that the applicant will request that either. So they will be ready to break ground, hopefully very soon.
Awesome.
I wish they were open now.
Exactly. Quesadilla, huh?
Moving on, item number 14, PADM 004 23, text amendment to subdivision regulation.
Mr. Mayor. This item was continued by the planning commission last night. It will be heard at the May planning commission. And so this is just an update to our zoning, or excuse me, to our subdivision regulations, but no action was taken. The public hearing was not opened. So everything has been continued to the May meeting. So we'll update you then.
Okay, thank you. Item number 15, discussion for city to assume maintenance, 10-foot pass.
Thank you, Mayor. The item before you tonight is just for informational purposes only. This is to let you know of the intent of the city to assume maintenance responsibility for the 10-foot wide multi-use paths that are being installed. The sidewalks in code currently are the responsibility of the adjacent property owner. However, during the course of the easement acquisition, we heard from a lot of the property owners that it's certainly different from a sidewalk to a 10-foot wide multi-use path. The 10-foot wide multi-use path is almost the same size as one lane of roadway. And so we have reviewed this with our city attorney and then also our land use attorney. And it was determined this is something that's able to be approved administratively. And this is something that we will budget moving forward. So this is just simply an update to the governing body at this time.
Thanks, Maddie. Anybody have any questions for Maddie on that?
Real quick, that means Mark Cruz shoveling the snow.
Yes,
Yeah.
that includes snow removal.
Like a Bobcat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have fun.
Moving on, item number 16, discussion of amendment of ordinances related to possession and maintaining of hens.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Over the past couple months, we've been talking a lot about chickens and if they are allowed on residential properties. Currently, our zoning code only references this through farms, which is mainly large scale commercial farms, which are permitted in agricultural and RO zoning. So currently, our code does not allow for hens to be kept on residential properties. There is an overview within your packet that will give you a summary of the research that has been conducted by city staff. You also do have a printout on your station. I apologize for it being that small and tiny, but it would only fit on one page that way. So looking at these regulations, we compared 13 different municipalities within the Leavenworth and Johnson County areas. 12 out of those 13 municipalities do allow for residential chickens to be on residential properties. Looking further into that, there are lot size requirements. Some of them required permits or plot planned as part of their submittal with their permit. And some municipalities even permitted by zoning district. So looking into those a little bit more, I just wanted to break that down so it's a little bit easier to understand. On average, the municipalities that do allow for hens by right on properties, that number ranges anywhere from 4 to 15 chickens. That average number would be 8, and the median number that we see reoccurring the most is 6. The majority of these municipalities do have lot size requirements, setback requirements, coop regulations, specify that these hens do need to be confined and also do have distance requirements from other dwellings or structures, buildings. So really, this is just for informational purposes at the direction of the city council. We could draft an ordinance or provide more information regarding chickens as well.
Anybody have any questions for Cameron?
I think I heard her say no free range.
Yes, so most of the municipalities require these hens to be in a confined area. As you can see, some of these lots do have less than 1 acre or more than 1 acre. Most of the ones that do have very large acres would allow for more hens, not necessarily have a maximum, and may let them range freely.
This is great. Nice.
Yeah.
It's a lot of information. I mean,
That's good though. And a lot more cities than I thought have
Yes.
approved it, so that's.
so the only one on that list that flat out refuses residential chickens is Miriam.
I saw that.
Mayor, one additional piece of information that I would offer from the research is Overland Park within about the last year or so implemented a pilot program for chickens. And so they kind of put on pause their permitting process, and they do permit chickens on private property in residential areas for a 2-year period. And then after that period, that pilot program could expire and it won't be allowed anymore, but the council, if that were to happen here, could revisit it in whatever time frame you all would want, but it doesn't have to be permanent initially. We could kind of do a trial period to see how it's going,
A trial period for 2 years.
or 1 year or whatever.
Then we can see how many complaints we have and go from there. That sounds good.
So you see how we need to fine tune it if need be.
I don't think one's enough, because it'll take a year for the word to kind of get out and people
Right.
supply their animals. Check out with their HOAs and do that.
I think-
side of it.
I think 2 years.
It's a good idea.
Would be
Thank you.
okay.
Well, and I disagree with there being a pilot. I mean, we have got all these other cities that saying yes, 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 yes. Then Overland Park decided they want to do a pilot because they, for whatever reason. You know, so no, I think we're either yes, we let them, or we don't. I don't, it's just, to me, it's just like some of our special permits. It's a 5-year permit, and then what's gonna happen? We're gonna say, no, they have to tear it down? No, let's just push it on through. If we have problems, we can always hold it back in.
Or just the ordinance and.
Or
yeah,
just, exactly, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I agree with you, Vernon.
I'd like to just allow it. I think, again, appreciate trying to do this the right way and try to let you get your chickens moving. So I think this is great information, gives us some good guidelines where, I lean towards hens from the noise side, hens only. And from the distances, I think 20 feet from property lines is good. And, as long as they're maintained in that range, I think hens only 20 foot is where I would lean.
I'm interested in hearing opinions on how many chickens.
Sounds like 6 or 8. If you're just going with the mean or the median.
People with 15. And I think I mentioned last time, I don't know that I need the chief or animal control going around to count chickens as long as there's not concerns, complaints
You're prepared to count chickens.
before or after they hatch.
Yeah.
So be very careful.
So I lean towards not having a limit if there's not complaints, but understand that intent.
I'm pretty open to this. I mean, I'm in definitely support of it.
Right.
I'm open to hear what your thoughts are.
I think last time I mentioned that I spent time in Georgia with my daughter and her chickens and horses and cows, goats, and all the other stuff. I think we need to have a limit.
I agree. I think we at least need to start with some.
Yeah.
Again, I don't know what that number is, if it's 6 or 8, just those two numbers keep popping out when you look at the chart, so.
Yeah.
How many were you looking for to have?
6.
6?
Makes sense because you have the form. Now, a lot of times, whatever head you have, that necessarily they're gonna pay us. They kind of want something a little bit over, just they can. So it's just that, I initially thought 6 was over. And I like the ending of it because people will get out of heavy things. That's how people want. The idea of fencing. Okay. That's fencing. I might be prejudiced because I have with the 5-foot fence around the property. But I like the idea and whatever chicken coop I end up getting is gonna have this full enclosure thing. But I like the idea that it makes sense.
My other city question is, how do you guys want to handle permitting? I mean, that's just. Do they do it once and it's good for 3 or 4 or 5 years, or do we just not really permit it? Is it worth the cost of trying to even monitor permits?
Like control C. Permitting and licensing chickens.
I'm good with that. I
I
agree with it.
prefer we just respond to complaints if they arise,
I agree.
please.
I feel like we need to put some kind of limit on it. I mean, I'd go at least 8 in case like he has a family of 4, but if you have a family of 5 or 6, I mean, the 8 would help. Yeah. Gene. He either does an egg for breakfast every morning.
So would the council be comfortable with us drafting an ordinance to bring back for your regular meeting that it is permitting of hens only, a maximum of 8, meeting specifics, setback, side yard setbacks of a distance of at least 20 feet, and then enclosure for the hens.
I know he said, I'm just trying to get a little, I'm doing nothing but reading the chart.
Mhm.
Looks like 5 of these are at 10 feet, a few are at 6. In my head, I just can't visualize, like, I don't even have 20 feet on my side yard because you'd hit my house. So it'd have to be the back, that'd be dead center in the middle of my backyard. I'm only looking at these numbers as far as.
So maybe if you
is
look
10
at
feet.
something between 10 and 6, I mean, I think from a staff perspective, I could definitely, and as a former code enforcement officer, I can definitely appreciate that you put something right up next to somebody else's property line and they're gonna be unhappy. And you want to make sure that they're still mowing behind it because they'll put it just close enough that they can't put a mower. That's a former code enforcement officer, and so let's keep it close enough that it's not on the neighbor's property and enough distance that they can maintain it, but also respectful that a lot of people don't have a huge yard.
I'm okay with 10.
I don't have a reason for any number on that besides.
Yeah,
just don't have.
I saw 20, and when I looked into this last time, there's decibel drop associated with distance, and so 20 lets that drop off pretty significantly, but I think 10, again, unless somebody's right up against the edge of their own property, and we've got things that prevent that from a housing standpoint, so you're gonna have that distance. I think
And let's just hope we never have to go on it.
Uh-huh. that
So city administrator, who's gonna write this up? Your staff's gonna look at this, evaluate this and come back with something for us, right? Okay, so let's move on. 20 feet, 15 feet, 10 feet. Let them tell us.
I see the city attorney taking very
Yeah.
focused.
Yeah.
Okay, you guys ready to move on?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, okay.
All right.
Number 17, City of Besa purchasing policy.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah.
Included in your packet are 2 revisions to the purchasing policy for the city of Baser. The changes are summarized in your packet. First, clarifying the positions of what a department head is, and then secondly, including the resolution that was passed last year regarding the city's city administrator's authority to implement the budget. So those 2 changes are included in the purchasing policy that's included in your packet. We would appreciate any feedback that you have.
Any questions?
The city administrator, in terms of purchasing authority, you do not have to provide any oversight of the department's heads expenditures as long as they are under $1,500.
If their expenditures are under 1,500. They don't have to come to me for express approval before they make those purchases, correct? However, depending on if it's on their P card, I still have to review it.
Okay.
And ultimately approve it on the back end.
I was just looking for some accountability and oversight with that piece right there.
There's still oversight.
Okay. And then when it comes to you, the accountability and oversight comes from us?
That is correct.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Consent.
Consent agenda.
Agreed.
Okay. Number 18, scheduling joint city county meeting.
Thank you, Mayor. Leslie, I don't need to tell you who I am, you know who I am. We did receive a communication from Mr. Mark Lawfrey, the Leavenworth County Administrator. The Leavenworth County Board of County Commissioners has expressed an interest in holding just a joint work session with the city of Basehor. They have offered or volunteered that, it's my understanding from Mr. Lawfrey that they have offered to come to Basehor. And that they would be willing to accommodate an evening meeting. As you know, the BOCC typically meets during the day, so I thought that was very nice of them to offer to do that. I did suggest to Mark that I would get with the city council this evening and see if potentially maybe Wednesday, May the 10th, which would be in advance of our regular work session at 5:30, or potentially Wednesday, May 24th in advance of our regular city council meeting might work. Staff would get sandwiches or something just to be able to provide a light meal. We realize that it overlaps with many people's dinner hour, and it's my understanding that there's no stated agenda for this meeting or any specific items, but one item that Mr. Lawfrey did bring up was the he didn't use the word interlocal, but I'll say our interlocal agreement on ongoing road maintenance for county-owned roads that exist within the city limits. So we've had a draft agreement that's been going back and forth for some time. I think the last time it was being circulated was actually during our 155th Street funding discussion. And so I'm sure there are other items that come up. The city certainly has some items that we're interested in discussing and pursuing with the BOCC, including potentially the county releasing funding for 155th Street now that the city has expended our, this lion's share of our portion of those funds will be exhausted by the end of 2023. And so perhaps revisiting release of those funds would be an appropriate topic for you to discuss as we're talking about roads.
So what are the two dates? You're looking at the work session or can everybody make it at 5:30? Yes. Can you make it at 5:30?
Yeah, 24th would be a little better, but I can make the 10th work, I think.
Vernon, I know you can't share. Vernon.
I'm good on both.
How about you, Ben?
I'm fine either one of them.
10th is good.
10th, okay with everybody?
24th is good too. I'm good with either one.
If we could do the 24th, that'd work better for me.
Okay.
Right, let's do it on the 24th.
Okay. I will send a note to Mr. Lawfrey that May 24th works the best for us. We will plan to have it here. We'll set the room up similar to how we did when we did the Joint Planning Commission City Council meeting, and then we'll have food.
You'll send an invite?
And we'll send an invite, of course.
Wonderful, thank you. Okay, are we gonna
Yes.
talk about moving the meeting on the 26th?
Yeah. That's
Um,
up to you all.
So we did have a council member who notified us that they would not be available to attend the April 26th meeting. As you know, we do have a rezoning request that is that will be coming in front of the city council. And so really, we're just trying to check attendance to make sure that we're going to have a quorum. And if we have other members that are going to be absent, we probably need to start looking at alternate dates. Or if the body just desires to move the date, we could do that as well to accommodate everyone.
Well, I know I'll either be at Mayo in Minnesota or on the road home, depending on appointments. So I my goal is to call in or Zoom in, but I don't know if you've got anybody else that's missing that day.
We do.
Okay.
It would be you and actually one other member.
Yeah, I think I'll be in Memphis that day. It's going to be in Memphis that day.
Okay, so we won't have a quorum on that date, so we definitely need to be looking for another date. And just based upon the dates that I'm hearing or that I've already heard, we may actually need to look at the first week of May. So perhaps, I know we have our governing body retreat on May the 3rd, but maybe we're looking at a special city council meeting on Wednesday, May the 3rd, instead of the end of April.
So the 26th, we won't have a quorum.
That's fair.
Okay, so that's.
You won't have
that's
a
out.
meeting. That's out.
No meeting. Okay,
So you're thinking that we would have the retreat during the day and then in the evening we would have the voting city council meeting at like 7, like we
Correct.
usually do?
Yes.
That would work for me. I don't know how others are.
Yeah, it works for me.
Be at the VFW or do we have to move from the VFW to hear the vote?
So the retreat typically is 9 a.m. to about 2 p.m.
All right. okay.
So we'd have
So we'll be here.
we'll be back here.
That's fine with me. What, would you say May the what?
Next Wednesday thereafter.
Yeah, I just was
So,
suggesting.
One Wednesday thereafter.
Oh, okay.
That's 7.
Maybe lose service dinner that night.
My
Yeah.
concern with moving it up a week is that you do have a rezoning item and we want to make sure
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
have appropriate
Yeah,
time.
agreed.
I don't want people thinking that we tried to adjust a meeting to
Yeah.
allow participation. That's
Right,
definitely
right.
not the intent.
No.
I'd rather give more time than less time.
Yeah.
Need a motion to adjourn.
Yes, sir.
Everybody in favor, say aye.
Ah.